Regret is a fire that burns backwards. It consumes what has already been done, what has already been lost, what cannot be rewound. It holds us captive in the ruins of our past actions, whispering that we should have chosen differently, spoken more wisely, or acted more boldly. The flames of regret turn the past into a prison, and we often find ourselves shackled to the memories of our mistakes, replaying the moments where we faltered. This is a trap that, unless consciously addressed, will hold us in perpetual paralysis, unable to fully embrace the present and move toward the future. Stoicism, an ancient Greek philosophy that emphasizes self-discipline, rationality, and living in harmony with nature, offers profound insight into how we can confront and overcome regret. The Stoic philosophers Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus advocated for a life grounded in the acceptance of what is outside our control and a relentless focus on what is within our power. One of the core tenets of Stoicism is the idea that our external circumstances, including our past actions, do not define us. It is how we respond to them that shapes our character and our future. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, writes, "What is the point of dragging up sufferings that are over, of being miserable now because you were miserable then?" His words echo a key Stoic idea. The past is immutable. We cannot change what has happened, but we can choose how we respond to it. Regret, when allowed to consume us, distorts our perception and keeps us stuck in the past. It demands a rewrite of history, a second chance at moments already lost. But Stoicism teaches us that there is no virtue in endlessly ruminating on what cannot be undone. The Stoic instead focuses on clarity in the present, not to erase the past, but to learn from it and then move forward. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, captures this wisdom when he writes, "Don't let your reflection on the whole of your life crush you. Don't dwell on all the bad things that have happened or might happen. Focus on what's right in front of you." He encourages us to break free from the weight of the past and the anxiety of an uncertain future by grounding ourselves in the present moment. This advice is not just philosophical convenience. It is a survival skill. To live fully, we must free ourselves from the suffocating grip of regret and choose instead to direct our energy toward action and purpose. The problem of regret is not just a philosophical abstraction. It is something most of us can relate to intimately. We have all been haunted by moments where we wished we had acted differently, whether we spoke too harshly, missed an opportunity, or stayed silent when we should have spoken up. These moments often surface in the quiet of the night, when the mind races through what we could have done differently, when time seems to stretch back endlessly, and the pain of lost chances resurfaces with a vengeance. This is the fire of regret, burning backwards, consuming what is already gone. Yet the Stoic way is one of resilience, not denial. Stoics do not ignore or repress the past. They face it with clarity, seeking to understand the lessons it offers, without being enslaved by memory. They recognize that life is not about erasing mistakes or trying to rewrite history. It is about living with intention and discipline in the present, using what we have learned from the past to fuel our growth. The Stoic does not let regret determine their path. Instead, they use it as a stepping stone to a more virtuous, purposeful life, guided by the present moment and the choices that lie before them. In this exploration, we will dive deeper into how the Stoics faced the trials of life, how they dealt with regret, and how they found strength and clarity in the simple but profound act of moving forward. Chapter 1. The Weight of What You Can't. Undue regret is a peculiar and painful form of suffering. Unlike the pain of injury or the ache of loss, which at least feel immediate and finite, regret often feels like an endless cycle of self-recrimination. It lingers, haunting us with moments we cannot change. The harsh words spoken in anger, the opportunities missed, the time wasted. These are the ghosts of regret, unable to be laid to rest because they are tied to actions already completed. The past is beyond our reach, and yet it still manages to shape our thoughts, our emotions, and our choices in ways we cannot always control. The philosopher Seneca, one of the foremost Stoics, offered a powerful reflection on regret in his letters. To Lucilius, he asks, "What is the point of dragging up sufferings that are over, of being miserable now because you were miserable then?" His question encapsulates the heart of the Stoic approach to regret. The past cannot be changed, so to continue dwelling on it is a futile and unwise exercise. Regret does not help us undo the harm we've caused or reverse the missed opportunities. It only chains us to what is already gone, to a version of ourselves that can no longer act. And by doing so, it prevents us from moving forward and embracing the present moment. The problem with regret is not only that it traps us in the past, but also that it leads us to cling to a delusion that we should have done better. It convinces us that had we been more clever, more skilled, or more virtuous, we could have rewritten our own history. This belief, as Seneca warned, is a form of false wisdom. The idea that we should have known better at the time is an illusion. In reality, we did the best we could with the knowledge and circumstances available to us at that moment. We are not infallible, and we cannot foresee every consequence of our actions. This is the nature of life, imperfect, unpredictable, and shaped by choices we make with incomplete information. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius grapples with a similar concept when he writes, "Don't let your reflection on the whole of your life crush you. Don't dwell on all the bad things that have happened or might happen. Focus on what's right in front of you." Marcus understands that looking back at past missteps can be overwhelming, especially when we become consumed by regret. It's easy to get lost in the weight of every mistake we've made, every person we've hurt, and every opportunity we've missed. But the Stoic response to this is not to ignore the past or to pretend that it didn't happen. It is to acknowledge it for what it is, an unchangeable part of our story, and to shift our focus to the present. The present is where action lies, and only in the present can we make meaningful choices that shape the future. For the Stoics, the solution to regret is not to seek perfection or to endlessly rehearse the past, but to adopt a mindset of acceptance and growth. Life is not about rewriting history, but responding to it with virtue. As Epictetus, another key Stoic philosopher, explained in his discourses, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Our reactions are within our control, even when our circumstances are not. We cannot change what has already happened, but we can choose how we approach it and how we let it influence our present and future. Regret, when left unchecked, distorts our perception of ourselves. It convinces us that we are defined by our past failures, that our mistakes are a permanent part of our identity. But the Stoic rejects this notion. The past is not where power exists. It is not where we can act. To live constantly in the shadow of past regret is to deny the possibility of growth, to refuse to embrace the reality that we can always choose to act with virtue, no matter what has come before. The Stoic recognizes that each moment is a new opportunity to live according to their principles, to act with courage, wisdom, and justice, regardless of the failures or successes of the past. The key to freeing ourselves from the weight of regret is not to attempt to rewrite history, but to respond to it with clarity and wisdom. In the words of the philosopher Epictetus, remember that it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. It is the judgments we make about our past actions that fuel regret, not the actions themselves. By changing our judgments, by seeing our mistakes not as evidence of our inadequacy, but as opportunities for learning, we can release their hold on us. Consider the Stoic practice of amor fati, or the love of fate. This concept encourages us to embrace everything that happens to us, whether it is success or failure, joy or sorrow, as a necessary part of our journey. Instead of resisting or resenting the events of our past, we learn to accept them and find meaning in them. This acceptance does not mean that we condone harmful actions or neglect the lessons of our mistakes. Rather, it means that we recognize that our past is an integral part of who we are, and instead of regretting it, we use it to shape a better future. The challenge is not to deny our past, but to stop letting it define us. The Stoic path is not about erasing the scars of our history, but about understanding that we are more than our mistakes. Our power lies in our ability to learn from the past without being bound to it. Each time regret rears its head, the Stoic pauses, takes a breath, and asks, "What can I learn from this? How can I use this pain to fuel my progress?" Instead of allowing regret to paralyze, the Stoic turns it into a tool for growth. Seneca urges us to practice this discipline of moving forward, reminding us that time is a great healer, but only for those who are willing to learn from their mistakes. It is through this willingness to learn, rather than dwelling on what we cannot change, that we begin to reclaim our power and move past the weight of what we can't undo. The Stoic journey is one of constant progress, not perfection. It is about responding to the past with virtue, using the lessons we have learned to build a stronger, wiser, and more resilient version of ourselves, one decision at a time. Regret will always arise. It is a natural part of the human experience, but it need not be a prison. The Stoic path is one of transforming that regret into resolve, using it not as a weight, but as the fuel for a future defined not by what was lost, but by what we can still create. Chapter 2. Forgiveness is not a feeling. Forgiveness is often seen as an emotional release, a feeling of peace and closure that comes when we let go of past hurts. This view of forgiveness, while common in modern discourse, doesn't align with Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, forgiveness is not about achieving a warm, emotional sense of relief or reconciliation. Instead, it is a decision, a deliberate act of mental discipline. It is the choice to release the grip that past wrongs have on us and to move forward with clarity without being chained to the emotions tied to those wrongs. Epictetus, in his Discourses, famously stated, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments about them." This perspective reveals the Stoic understanding of forgiveness. It's not the offense itself that causes lasting damage, but the way we judge that offense and the way we allow it to linger in our minds. If we remain locked in resentment or guilt, we allow the wrong to control our present thoughts and actions. In the same way, when we hold on to past mistakes, whether committed by others or by ourselves, we give them power over us. The Stoic, however, rejects this passive submission to past events and embraces the active decision to reclaim control over their own thoughts and actions. To forgive, then, is not about waiting for the right feeling to emerge, nor is it a means of erasing the past. It is, rather, an exercise in releasing judgment. In this sense, forgiveness is a conscious decision, not a momentary wave of emotional clarity. The decision to forgive does not require a sudden or dramatic emotional shift, but rather a firm commitment to let go of the hold that anger, resentment, or regret have on us. It is an act of strength, not weakness, as it requires the discipline to rise above emotion and view the situation with greater rationality and perspective. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, wrote, "The first step in the practice of forgiveness is the realization that we are all human. It is understanding that others, like ourselves, are subject to error and imperfection." This idea is central to the Stoic view of forgiveness. Rather than seeing forgiveness as an emotional reaction to an apology or an acknowledgement of wrong, the Stoic recognizes that every person, including themselves, is fallible. We are all prone to error, and the Stoic, by understanding this, is able to accept the imperfections of others without allowing them to control their emotions. The act of forgiving becomes a release not because the other person has apologized or corrected their mistake, but because the Stoic has chosen to free themselves from the emotional burden tied to the wrong. The Stoic idea of forgiveness also extends to self-forgiveness. Often, it is easier to forgive others than it is to forgive ourselves. Our own mistakes, our own failures can feel like permanent markers on our identity, haunting us with their weight. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This simple yet profound truth is key to understanding Stoic self-forgiveness. It is not the event or the mistake itself that defines us, but how we respond to it. We are not condemned by our failures unless we allow them to define us. The decision to forgive ourselves is the decision to release ourselves from the shackles of guilt and to embrace the freedom that comes from acting in alignment with virtue. But how can we forgive ourselves when the mistakes feel too large, too damaging to simply let go of. The Stoics would encourage us to reframe the narrative surrounding those mistakes. Instead of viewing our failures as irredeemable flaws, we are asked to look at them as opportunities for learning and growth. As Epictetus said, "Don't seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead, want them to happen as they do, and you will be at peace." This means accepting our mistakes, not as marks of failure, but as necessary stepping stones in the process of becoming better versions of ourselves. By doing this, we stop allowing past mistakes to anchor us in guilt or shame. Instead, we see them as part of our ongoing journey, teaching us lessons that cannot be learned through success alone. It is important to note that Stoic forgiveness is not about excusing the wrongdoing or ignoring the harm caused. Forgiveness, as the Stoic sees it, is not a form of passive acceptance of injustice. It is a mental and emotional shift that releases us from being emotionally controlled by the wrong. In his discourses, Epictetus teaches that forgiveness is about freeing the mind from its shackles, rather than ignoring the consequences of the offense. We may still hold others accountable for their actions, but we do not allow those actions to continuously torment us emotionally. This is the power of Stoic forgiveness, the ability to acknowledge wrongdoing without allowing it to dominate our inner peace. This idea of forgiveness as emotional release is particularly useful when considering how we deal with regret. Regret, like anger or resentment, is an emotion that arises from judgment. If we view a past action as a moral failure, then regret will naturally follow. But for the Stoic, regret is a judgment that must be actively changed. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflected, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Rather than lingering in regret over what could have been, the Stoic focuses on becoming the best version of themselves now. The discipline of forgiveness, both towards others and ourselves, frees us from the weight of past mistakes, allowing us to move forward with a clear mind and a sense of purpose. Ultimately, the Stoic path to forgiveness is not about making peace with the wrongs of the past or waiting for some ideal moment of emotional clarity. It is about making the conscious choice to let go of judgment. Forgiveness is a decision, one that restores our mental and emotional freedom and allows us to turn our attention to the present and the future. It is a strength that comes from understanding the imperfection of all human beings, including ourselves, and from choosing not to let our past mistakes, whether those of others or our own, control our lives. Through this process, we reclaim our power, not by erasing the past, but by choosing how we relate to it. Chapter 3. The past is information, not identity. One of the most insidious traps that regret can set is the belief that what we have done defines who we are. We see ourselves through the lens of our past mistakes, failures, or perceived inadequacies, and we allow these events to shape our self-image and self-worth. This trap is not only emotionally harmful, but it also leads us to miss the Stoic insight that the past is information, not identity. The Stoic recognizes that our actions and experiences, good and bad, are data points in the ongoing journey of self-development, not fixed definitions of who we are. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, reminds us of this perspective in his Meditations. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." His words reflect a central Stoic tenet. Our identity is not bound to external events, nor is it determined by the mistakes we've made. We are not defined by our past actions. Instead, we have the power to define who we are through how we respond to those actions and how we choose to act in the present. The past is not a permanent mark upon us. It is simply part of our story, a collection of experiences that contribute to our growth and understanding. When we look at the past through a Stoic lens, we begin to see it as an opportunity for learning, rather than a source of shame or regret. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, writes, "Time is the most valuable thing a man can spend." This quote reminds us that time, like the past, is something that can never be reclaimed. The actions of yesterday are gone, but the lessons they offer are ours to keep. The past is an instructor, not a judge. If we approach it with humility and a willingness to learn, we gain valuable insights that can help us make better decisions in the future. The Stoic philosophy teaches that the past, while valuable for learning, should never be used as a basis for defining our identity. It is far too easy to let past mistakes shape our self-perception. For instance, when we fail at something, whether it's a personal relationship, a professional endeavor, or even a moral choice, we may fall into the trap of believing that failure is who we are. But failure, as the Stoics would argue, is simply a temporary state, a part of the process of becoming a better version of ourselves. It does not define us unless we allow it to. In Discourses, Epictetus highlights the distinction between who we are and what we have done. He writes, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When we see failure as an opportunity for growth, we are able to learn from it without letting it define us. The key to this is recognizing that we are not our past mistakes. We are the sum of our present choices, and our character is built through our responses to challenges, not by being trapped in the judgment of past actions. The Stoic does not identify with their failures, but with their ability to rise above them. One of the most powerful aspects of Stoicism is its emphasis on control. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius continually reminds himself to focus on what he can control and to accept what he cannot. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way, he writes. This quote embodies the Stoic view that obstacles, including our past mistakes, are not roadblocks to our progress. Rather, they are opportunities for us to refine our character and practice virtue. The past, then, is not something to be mourned or feared, but something to be understood and used as a stepping stone toward greater wisdom. However, it's essential to acknowledge that the past can only serve as information, not identity, if we are willing to process it rationally. To reflect on the past from a place of clarity rather than through the lens of emotion or regret is a fundamental Stoic practice. The Stoics encourage us to engage in prososche, or mindfulness, when reflecting on our past actions. By observing our mistakes without judgment or self-condemnation, we create space for learning rather than emotional entrapment. This process allows us to extract wisdom from our past without being enslaved by it. Consider the example of a person who regrets not pursuing a particular career path. They may have been discouraged by fear, lack of resources, or simply a lack of self-belief at the time. The Stoic approach would be to acknowledge that fear or hesitation as a part of their history, but not to let it dictate their future. Instead of dwelling on the missed opportunity, they would ask, "What have I learned from this? What can I do differently now?" The Stoic would not use that regret as a reason to stop moving forward. They would treat it as a lesson, not a defining moment, and move forward with greater clarity and intention. In The Art of Living, Epictetus writes, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests." This metaphor illustrates how the Stoics viewed adversity, not as something to avoid, but as a challenge that shapes our growth. Our past is filled with storms, and though we may falter in those storms, we are not defined by our inability to avoid them. What matters is how we navigate through them. The Stoic sees every failure and misstep as a chance to refine their wisdom, to better understand their values, and to develop resilience. We must also recognize that living as if the past defines us leads to stagnation. If we remain anchored in past actions, whether they are mistakes or successes, we allow those actions to dictate our future possibilities. Stoicism teaches us to let go of the attachment to past identity. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflects, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If we constantly think of ourselves as failures or as people defined by past mistakes, we create an identity that is limited by those thoughts. But when we recognize that the past is information, an instructor rather than a master, we free ourselves from those limitations and create space for new possibilities. The Stoic practice of ataraxia, or tranquility, is achieved not through the denial of the past, but through the acceptance of its role in shaping our journey. We learn from it, and then we let it go. The past does not hold us back unless we cling to it. We must look at our mistakes, learn from them, and then choose to live in the present with purpose and resolve. Our identity is not rooted in the past, it is shaped by the present choices we make and the future we are creating. In the end, the Stoic belief that the past is merely information and not identity allows us to break free from the constraints of regret and shame. We are not our failures. We are the people who rise from them, the people who choose virtue and wisdom in the face of adversity. The past teaches us, but it does not define us. What defines us is how we respond in the present moment, how we choose to build a future based on what we have learned and the values we hold dear. Chapter 4. There is no guilt in growth. Growth is an inherent part of life, yet many of us struggle with the guilt that can accompany progress. This guilt is especially common when we evolve in ways that distance us from our past selves. We may feel as though we are betraying the person we used to be, abandoning the old habits, relationships, or even the identity we once held dear. The Stoic philosophy offers a powerful counter to this. There is no guilt in growth. Growth is not a betrayal of who we were, but a natural unfolding of who we are meant to become. To resist it is to stagnate, to deny the essential nature of life itself. One of the central tenets of Stoicism is the belief that life is in constant motion, and this movement is not something to fear but to embrace. As Marcus Aurelius reflects in his Meditations, nature is change, life is flux. To grow, to adapt, and to refine ourselves in response to the challenges life presents is not only natural but necessary. To remain fixed, clinging to outdated versions of ourselves is to deny the very nature of existence. Growth is not an insult to our past selves. It is the fulfillment of what we have been striving for all along. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, echoes this idea, warning against the false comfort of staying stagnant. Time discovers truth. One way or another, we all must evolve. Seneca reminds us that the truth of who we are emerges not in the complacency of familiarity, but in the discomfort of change. Growth involves moving beyond what once served us, whether it's outgrowing old friendships, letting go of certain desires, or shifting our goals and values. If we fear this evolution, we risk remaining tethered to a past that no longer aligns with our current truth. The guilt that often accompanies growth arises when we perceive change as disloyalty to our former self or to others who are still attached to the version of us that once existed. The Stoic approach, however, reframes this by emphasizing that growth is not an abandonment of one's roots, but a continuation of the journey. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius stresses that we must not fear change, for it is the very process of life. Our roots, our values, our virtues remain even as we adapt and evolve. The challenge then is not to resist growth, but to make conscious choices that align with our deeper purpose and values. To understand why there is no guilt in growth, we must first understand that growth does not mean erasing the past, but building on it. A Stoic sees their past as a foundation, not a final definition of who they are. Just as a tree grows by expanding beyond its initial roots, so too does a person grow by expanding their understanding of themselves and the world. The philosopher Epictetus reminds us that we are not meant to remain in the same place, saying, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. We cannot become who we are meant to be without embracing the challenges and discomforts of growth. This concept of growth without guilt is particularly important when we consider how we outgrow relationships or environments that no longer serve us. Often, growth requires us to let go of past relationships, whether friendships, romantic connections, or family dynamics that no longer align with the person we are becoming. This can be difficult, and we may feel guilt for outgrowing these connections, especially if they were once a central part of our identity. Yet the Stoic teaches us that to evolve is not to betray those relationships, but to honor the fact that we are on a different path. In letters to Lucilius, Seneca writes, "It is not the absence of change, but the presence of it that gives us meaning. You can't hold on to the past without stifling the future." The Stoic sees this natural evolution as part of the pursuit of eudaimonia, the flourishing life. Growth is the expression of our purpose, not a rejection of who we were. In fact, it is precisely because we are grounded in our principles, our wisdom, our virtue, that we are able to grow without feeling guilty. Growth does not mean becoming someone we aren't. It means becoming more of who we truly are. It means shedding the layers of fear, doubt, and external expectations that once held us back and embracing the unfolding of our authentic selves. This idea is reinforced by the Stoic concept of amor fati, or love of fate. This concept invites us to embrace every part of our journey, including the uncomfortable or difficult parts. Instead of viewing the need for change as a sign of failure or a cause for guilt, we are encouraged to see it as an essential part of our life's unfolding. We do not resist the passage of time or the evolution of our minds and bodies. Rather, we accept it, knowing that growth is the most natural expression of life's course. As Marcus Aurelius writes in his Meditations, everything is fleeting and everything is constantly changing. What happens is neither good nor bad. It simply is. It's important to recognize that guilt in this context is often a form of attachment to an outdated self-concept. We may feel guilty for no longer identifying with the person we once were, or for no longer engaging in behaviors that were once a part of our identity. However, to remain attached to these outdated concepts is to cling to a false sense of permanence. The Stoic practice of ataraxia, mental tranquility, calls us to let go of such attachments and to move freely with the flow of life. We are not bound by who we once were, and to feel guilty for outgrowing an identity is to deny the essential nature of personal development. Furthermore, guilt in growth can also arise when we start shedding old habits or routines that no longer serve us. For example, perhaps we outgrow habits like procrastination, excessive indulgence, or even relationships with people who encourage unhealthy behaviors. It is natural to feel a sense of guilt when we break free from these patterns, especially if they provided comfort or familiarity in the past. However, Stoicism teaches that it is not the habit itself that should cause guilt, but our failure to act in alignment with our values and purpose. Seneca warns against self-deception, saying, "Don't fall for the trap of thinking you're on the right path because it's familiar. You must grow beyond what you once thought you needed." The Stoics' approach to growth is one of detachment, not from the past, but from any attachment to a fixed identity or idea of who we should be. We grow by aligning ourselves with nature and virtue, by continually improving and refining ourselves. Growth is the natural result of living a life in accordance with reason, and as long as we remain committed to our principles, we need not feel guilt for evolving. In conclusion, guilt is an unnecessary burden when it comes to growth. The Stoic teaches us that growth is not a betrayal of our past selves, but the fulfillment of our potential. We are not static beings. We are constantly evolving, expanding, and becoming. To grow is not to reject who we were, but to honor the journey that has brought us to where we are. Just as a tree must shed its old leaves to continue growing, so too must we shed outdated beliefs, habits, and relationships to fully embrace the next stage of our development. Guilt has no place in this process. Growth, when approached with intention and aligned with virtue, is always a good and necessary part of our human journey. Chapter 5. The only direction left is forward, one of the most essential truths of life. And a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy is that the past is immutable. It cannot be undone, relitigated, or changed. We can only move forward. And yet, how often do we find ourselves tethered to the past, holding on to regrets, hurts, or missed opportunities as if they define us? The Stoics understood that to move forward in life, we must embrace this reality and release our attachment to what cannot be changed. The past is fixed. It is the present and the future that we can shape through our actions, decisions, and mindset. The only direction left, then, is forward. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, provides a powerful reminder of this Stoic truth. The past is a realm of illusions, a realm of shadows. We are given one thing, today, and it is to today we must devote our attention. The Stoic Emperor encourages us to focus not on what has already been done, nor on what we cannot control, but on the present moment. The power we hold is in how we act in the present and how we shape the future. Every second we waste looking backward is a second we are not using to advance ourselves and our purpose. The root of the problem lies in our attachment to the past. Regret, guilt, nostalgia, and resentment all stem from looking backward and wishing that things had unfolded differently. We replay conversations in our minds, wonder about what could have been, and punish ourselves for mistakes that have long since passed. But as Seneca warned in his letters to Lucilius, what is past is no longer yours to change. The Stoic recognizes that the past cannot be altered by wishing it away, by obsessing over it, or by mourning the opportunities lost. It can only be learned from, understood, and used as a foundation for future action. One of the main obstacles to moving forward is the mind's tendency to anchor itself in the past. Often, we allow the weight of what has happened to limit our potential. We mistake the past for our identity, thinking that our past mistakes or even our past successes define who we are. But as Epictetus teaches in his discourses, don't waste time on what's beyond your control. Your life is shaped by your thoughts, and your thoughts are shaped by your actions. In essence, it is not the past itself that holds us back, it is how we respond to it. If we view the past as a prison, we will be imprisoned. But if we view it as information, as something we can learn from, we free ourselves from its grip. The Stoic solution to this problem is to focus on what is within our control, our thoughts, attitudes, and actions in the present moment. The past is a series of events that are beyond our reach, but the present is a place where our choices are made. The Stoic philosophy urges us to stop revisiting past mistakes or missed opportunities, and instead focus on how we can improve our situation now, moving forward with intention and virtue. Marcus Aurelius beautifully encapsulates this idea when he says, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not to say that the past is irrelevant. On the contrary, the Stoic views the past as a powerful tool for learning. We should reflect on our past actions, mistakes, and choices, but not with the intention of punishing ourselves or living in regret. The goal is not to dwell on what went wrong, but to extract the lessons that will guide us in the future. For the Stoic, reflection is a means to self-improvement, not self-flagellation. As Seneca puts it, what a man can do, he must do. What a man has done, he must not forget, but neither must he allow it to rule him. It is critical to recognize that while the past holds valuable lessons, the Stoic avoids the trap of living in it. The weight of old mistakes or missed chances becomes unbearable if we let it linger too long in our thoughts. Epictetus offers a powerful exercise for overcoming this tendency. When you have been wronged by someone, don't let it become a part of your identity. Let it pass through your mind as a traveler passing by a town. It does not live there. It moves on. This image of allowing the past to pass through us without allowing it to define us is central to the Stoic approach to life. This practice of not dwelling in the past is not about suppressing emotions or avoiding pain. The Stoic does not deny the reality of suffering or regret, but rather reframes them. Pain, regret, and sorrow are natural parts of the human experience, and they do not need to be avoided or denied. What the Stoic teaches is that these feelings do not have to control us or hold us back. Instead of clinging to them, we accept them, learn from them, and then release them, choosing to focus on the present moment and the choices we can make in the here and now. For instance, if you find yourself thinking about a past mistake, whether it's a missed opportunity, an action you regret, or something you wish you had done differently, the Stoic practice is to acknowledge the mistake, understand the lesson it offers, and then let it go. The key is to turn regret into a tool for improvement, not a source of paralysis. Epictetus teaches, don't ask for things to happen the way you want, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will find peace. In other words, instead of wishing that past events had been different, we accept them as they were, understanding that they were part of a larger, often unknowable, process of growth. The Stoic mindset empowers us to make the choice to move forward, even when the past feels heavy. The present moment is the only place where we can act, and it is where we must place our energy and attention. Marcus Aurelius advises, focus on the present, The past is gone, and the future is uncertain. The only thing we can control is how we respond in the here and now. This simple yet profound statement encapsulates the Stoic approach to life. We cannot change the past, but we can shape our future through our present actions. The decision to move forward, to rise above regret and sorrow, is a choice that we make daily. Stoicism offers us a powerful antidote to the toxic weight of regret. By recognizing that the past is fixed and beyond our control, we free ourselves from its hold. Instead of dwelling on what cannot be changed, we focus on what can be, our thoughts, our actions, and our direction moving forward. Each moment is an opportunity to choose the right path, to act with virtue, and to move closer to our fullest potential. The only direction left is forward. This is the Stoic way. Through each challenge, each misstep, and each success, we move ahead with purpose, using our past not as a weight, but as a foundation upon which to build the future. In every moment, we have the power to choose, and with each choice, we carve out the life we are meant to live. Chapter 6. Stillness is a weapon. In a world that moves at breakneck speed, where distractions abound and emotions are often stirred by external events, the Stoic philosopher sees stillness as a rare and powerful weapon. In the midst of chaos, stillness is the ability to remain grounded, to not be tossed about by every passing impulse or emotional surge. It is not about inaction or indifference. It is about mastering our reactions and responding with clarity, rather than being swept away by the current of the moment. In a world full of noise, stillness becomes a form of power. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, provides a profound insight into this concept in his Meditations, stating, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The core of Stoic philosophy is that while we cannot control the external events of our lives, we have complete control over how we respond to them. Stillness is the mastery of that response. It is the deliberate practice of not allowing our emotions to dictate our actions, of maintaining composure even in the face of adversity or provocation. In this sense, stillness is not passivity, but an active, powerful decision to stay grounded in the face of whatever life throws our way. This concept of stillness can be understood as a mental discipline, akin to the physical discipline a soldier might practice to hone their combat skills. Just as a soldier must remain calm and focused under fire, the Stoic must cultivate a stillness of mind to navigate the turbulence of life. This discipline is essential because, as Epictetus reminds us in his discourses, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. The mind is the battleground, and stillness is the ability to resist being swept into the emotional chaos that arises from our judgments. In practice, stillness requires us to cultivate an awareness of our thoughts and emotions. Instead of reacting impulsively to the first stirring of anger, fear, or desire, we pause. We take a step back and examine what is happening within us. Why do we feel the way we do? What is the underlying belief or judgment fueling this emotional reaction? By observing our inner state with detachment, we create the space necessary to make a thoughtful, deliberate response. This moment of pause allows us to act with wisdom and purpose, rather than reacting with haste or unchecked emotion. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, emphasizes this importance of pausing before reacting. He writes, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." This is the essence of stillness. It allows us to recognize that the majority of our suffering arises not from external circumstances, but from the way we react to them. By practicing stillness, we can break the cycle of fear, anxiety, and regret that often arises from our judgments about the past or the future. We learn to focus our attention on what is in our control, our thoughts, our responses, our actions, and let go of the rest. Stillness is also crucial when we face conflict or provocation. When someone wrongs us or challenges our beliefs, the natural instinct may be to react immediately, to defend our honor, our reputation, or our sense of justice. But the Stoic approach is different. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius writes, "When you are offended by any man's fault, turn to yourself and reflect in what manner you are similar to the offender. This internal reflection requires stillness. Instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, the Stoic takes a moment to reflect on their own shortcomings, their own imperfections. This practice of self-examination not only prevents rash reactions, but also fosters empathy, as we recognize our own capacity for fault and error. Stillness, then, is a means of maintaining composure in the face of external chaos, allowing us to respond with wisdom rather than reacting impulsively. Moreover, stillness is a form of mental resilience. Life is filled with challenges, setbacks, and uncertainties, and it is easy to become overwhelmed by them. The Stoic, however, remains anchored in the present moment, refusing to be swept away by the storm. Epictetus teaches, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Stillness is the practice of self-mastery. It is the ability to remain steady and focused, even when life becomes tumultuous. In moments of difficulty, the Stoic does not allow their mind to spiral into despair or overwhelm. Instead, they maintain a calm center, understanding that their ability to choose their response is where their true power lies. In the face of emotional turmoil, stillness allows us to make better decisions. When we are emotionally reactive, we tend to act out of impulse, driven by fear, anger, or desire. These reactions are often driven by automatic mental patterns and judgments, which do not necessarily reflect our true values or long-term goals. By practicing stillness, we disrupt these automatic patterns. We create the space needed to reflect, to make decisions aligned with our principles and purpose, rather than reacting in ways that may bring regret. This practice of mindfulness, or prosos, the attention we give to our thoughts and emotions, becomes a tool for deliberate action, rooted in virtue and wisdom. But stillness does not mean that we suppress or ignore our emotions. Rather, it is about acknowledging our emotions, without allowing them to dictate our actions. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius notes, "When you have trouble getting up in the morning, reflect that you are doing what you were made to do." This reflection helps the Stoic maintain focus on their greater purpose, even in the face of discomfort or resistance. In the same way, stillness helps us remember our higher goals and values, even when emotions threaten to derail us. It is not about denying or suppressing emotions, but about recognizing them for what they are, temporary states that do not define us, and choosing to respond with intentionality. A powerful metaphor for this practice of stillness is the image of a rock standing firm amidst the waves of the ocean. The waves, like our emotions, may crash and swirl around us, but the rock remains unmoved. This is the essence of Stoic stillness, to remain anchored in our values, regardless of the external chaos around us. Seneca writes, "A calm mind is better than a disturbed one. A steady mind is more valuable than a mind filled with tumult and confusion." Stillness is not an escape from life's challenges, but a way to navigate them with grace, wisdom, and strength. In conclusion, stillness is not the absence of emotion or action, but the mastery of our internal state. It is the deliberate choice to remain grounded, to pause before reacting, and to choose responses that align with our deeper values. In a world that encourages constant reaction, stillness becomes a radical act of self-control, mental clarity, and resilience. It is through stillness that we find true power, not by suppressing our emotions or desires, but by consciously choosing how we engage with them. The Stoics' practice of stillness allows them to face life's challenges with calm and clarity, making it a weapon that can turn chaos into opportunity, turmoil into growth, and suffering into strength. Chapter 7. Pain as Proof of Depth. In the midst of pain, it's easy to feel like we are being broken, defeated by the weight of our struggles. The Stoic, however, offers a radically different perspective. To them, pain is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a teacher that reveals the true depths of our character. In the Stoic worldview, pain is not merely a signal of suffering. It is evidence that we are deeply engaged in life. The fact that we experience pain means that we are not detached or indifferent to the world around us. We care, we feel, and we are connected to the world and its challenges. Pain, in this sense, is proof of depth, a marker of emotional engagement and philosophical Strength Epictetus in his Discourses writes, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor strengthens the body." This metaphor emphasizes that pain, whether physical or emotional, can build mental resilience. Just as lifting weights challenges and strengthens the muscles, the struggles we face in life strengthen our character, our virtues, and our resolve. The Stoic view is that pain is not something to avoid, but something to embrace as an opportunity for growth. It is through our pain that we gain understanding, humility, and the strength to face future challenges. For many, pain feels like an intrusion, an unwelcome force that disrupts our lives. But the Stoic philosopher does not seek to eliminate pain, nor to view it as something inherently negative. Instead, they see pain as an inevitable and even essential part of the human experience. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius observes, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It is a wrestling match with the trials of life, and pain is one of those trials. This wrestling with life's difficulties is where we shape and define ourselves. Pain is part of the challenge of living a meaningful life. It sharpens us, teaches us what we are truly made of, and gives us the opportunity to transform adversity into wisdom." The Stoic notion of amor fati, the love of one's fate, reinforces this view. The Stoic doesn't simply endure pain, they embrace it as a necessary part of their journey. It is through suffering that we learn and grow. To reject pain, to wish for a life without hardship, is to reject life itself. As Nietzsche, a philosopher who influenced Stoic thought, famously wrote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." Pain, far from being a force that weakens us, is the crucible in which we are forged into something stronger, more capable, and more grounded in our purpose. For the Stoic, it is not the presence of pain that matters, but how we respond to it. A person who succumbs to suffering and allows it to define them has failed to see the opportunity that pain presents. It is only by choosing to face pain with courage, clarity, and wisdom that we can transform it into a source of strength. In his letters to Lucilius, Seneca writes, "It is not the suffering itself that brings us down, but our judgment about it. When we view pain as something to be feared or avoided at all costs, we set ourselves up for failure." The Stoic teaches that we must change our judgment about pain. Instead of viewing it as something that diminishes us, we should view it as something that enhances us, deepening our understanding and expanding our resilience. This Stoic approach to pain requires us to view it from a philosophical and rational perspective. It is easy, in moments of suffering, to lose ourselves in negative emotions, anger, self-pity, frustration. But the Stoic responds to pain with reason. They ask themselves, what is this pain teaching me? How can I use this experience to grow? Pain, in this sense, becomes a form of instruction. It reveals the areas where we need to grow, the values that we may have neglected, or the strength that we have yet to cultivate. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflects, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Pain is the impediment that drives us to action. It presents an obstacle, yes, but it is through overcoming this obstacle that we develop greater strength, wisdom, and clarity." The Stoic also views pain as an opportunity to cultivate virtues such as patience, perseverance, and humility. Pain, especially when it is prolonged or intense, forces us to confront our limits and weaknesses. But rather than retreating from these limitations, the Stoic leans into them, seeing them as opportunities to develop the character traits necessary for overcoming adversity. For example, patience is born out of enduring hardship without giving into frustration or despair. Perseverance is cultivated by continuing to move forward in the face of pain, refusing to be paralyzed by difficulty. Humility arises when we accept that pain is part of life and that we, like all human beings, are vulnerable to it. Pain also forces us to confront the impermanence of life, which is another Stoic lesson. Everything is temporary, including our suffering. Seneca writes in On the Shortness of Life, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Much of our pain comes not from the actual events themselves, but from our perception of those events. When we accept the reality that all things, both good and bad, are fleeting, we can more easily endure pain. We recognize that suffering is temporary and that it too will pass. The Stoic mindset enables us to endure pain with equanimity, knowing that it is a passing moment in the greater arc of our lives. In addition to personal growth, pain serves as a teacher of compassion. Through our own suffering, we learn empathy and understanding for others who are going through similar struggles. Seneca writes, "Pain is something we all share. It is the universal experience of being human. By embracing our own pain, we deepen our connection to others." The Stoic recognizes that the suffering of others is not an abstraction. It is a shared experience that unites us all. As we face our own pain with dignity and resolve, we develop a greater capacity to support and care for others who are suffering. This idea of pain as proof of depth also applies to the Stoic's view on their own imperfections. The Stoic is not someone who seeks perfection, but someone who strives to improve continuously. Pain often arises from our failures, whether in our actions, our relationships, or our aspirations. But the Stoic views these failures not as evidence of inadequacy, but as opportunities to learn and grow. Each mistake, each moment of pain, is a step on the path toward greater self-awareness and virtue. In this way, pain becomes a necessary part of the process of self-improvement, not something to be feared or avoided. In conclusion, pain is not something to shy away from or deny. It is a proof of depth, a sign that we are engaged with life, that we care deeply, and that we are constantly evolving. The Stoic teaches us to face pain with courage, to use it as a teacher, and to recognize it as an opportunity for growth. Pain is not the enemy. It is the forge in which our character is shaped, the crucible in which we are made stronger. In embracing pain, we embrace the fullness of life, recognizing that it is through our suffering that we develop the resilience, wisdom, and compassion necessary to live a virtuous and meaningful life. Through this process, we come to understand that every hardship, no matter how painful, carries within it the seed of strength and growth. Chapter 8. You cannot lose what you learned. One of the most powerful and liberating truths of Stoic philosophy is that the wisdom we gain from our experiences is not something that can be taken from us. Unlike material possessions, relationships, or even opportunities, the knowledge and insights we acquire through life's trials cannot be lost, stolen, or erased. This is a central tenet of Stoic thought, and it is through this understanding that we can begin to embrace the hardships of life, knowing that what we learn from them will remain with us forever. As Marcus Aurelius famously wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The idea here is that, while we cannot control what happens to us or the actions of others, we do have complete control over what we choose to learn from those experiences. In every difficulty, challenge, and failure, there is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity that remains ours to keep, no matter what the external outcome may be. This wisdom is impervious to time and circumstance. Once gained, it becomes part of our inner foundation, a resource we can always draw upon in future endeavors. For many, the fear of failure or loss can be paralyzing. We worry that if we make the wrong decision, miss an opportunity, or suffer some setback, we will have lost something irretrievable. However, the Stoic philosophy teaches that no failure is truly a loss if we extract the lessons it offers. In his letters to Lucilius, Seneca reminds us, "What is lost is not what is most precious. The things of the world are perishable, but what we have learned is within us, and it is eternal." This perspective reframes failure, not as a permanent loss, but as a stepping stone toward greater self-mastery and understanding. The reason we cannot lose what we have learned is because wisdom is not a physical object, subject to theft or decay. Wisdom, knowledge, and insight become a part of our character. They are integrated into our thinking, our decision-making, and our worldview. Once learned, they shape the way we approach life, and no external event can undo the internal transformation that learning produces. As Epictetus, in his discourses, teaches, "It's not what happens to you that matters, but how you respond to it." What you learn in your responses becomes your inner strength. For example, when we make mistakes, whether in our careers, relationships, or personal pursuits, we may feel that we have lost something valuable. But, according to Stoic thought, we have gained something much more valuable in return: experience. Through our mistakes, we gain clarity about what works and what does not. We learn more about our own strengths, weaknesses, values, and priorities. The wisdom gained from these experiences shapes our future decisions, guiding us toward more virtuous and effective actions. This insight is echoed by the Stoic philosopher and emperor Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." This statement reminds us that the lessons we learn, whether they come from successes or failures, contribute to the greater good of our lives. Every challenge we face teaches us something vital about who we are and how we relate to the world around us. These lessons cannot be erased, for they are integral to our personal development. No amount of regret or longing for the past can take away the wisdom we have gained along the way. The Stoics believed that we should view every experience, whether pleasant or painful, as an opportunity for growth. By adopting this mindset, we free ourselves from the burden of regret. Regret arises when we focus on what we think we have lost, be it time, opportunities, or relationships. The Stoic response, however, is to focus on what we have gained, which is the knowledge and understanding, to make better choices in the future. This shift in focus from loss to gain allows us to transcend feelings of victimhood and begin to embrace life's challenges as opportunities for learning and improvement. Seneca makes a striking point in his work on the shortness of life. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough and has been given to us in ample measure for the highest achievements, if we use it wisely. We may look back at past mistakes and see only loss, but the truth is that we have been given ample time to learn and grow. The time spent in failure is not wasted if we extract wisdom from it. Even when our external circumstances seem to be falling apart, the inner wisdom we gain from the experience remains ours forever. The Stoic view of life, then, is not one of loss and regret, but of continual growth through experience. It's also important to consider that our capacity to learn is what ultimately defines our growth, not the outcomes themselves. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflects, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This is a reminder that the thoughts we cultivate, our reflections, our judgments, and our responses to life's challenges are what shape us. Every lesson we learn, every insight we gain, becomes part of the fabric of our character. It is not the specific circumstances we face that matter, but how we respond to them. Once learned, these lessons become indelible, like the permanent marks left by a chisel on stone. The idea that we cannot lose what we have learned is especially crucial when considering the many trials we face throughout life. Pain, loss, and failure may be unavoidable parts of the human condition, but they are not ultimately wasted. Instead, these experiences deepen our understanding of life, of ourselves, and of others. In Letters to Lucilius, Seneca writes, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which depends on the future, and if we are always looking to the future, we will miss the lessons that the present offers us. Every moment, even the difficult ones, provides us with lessons that shape who we are becoming. By focusing on the lessons rather than the losses, we free ourselves from the paralysis that often accompanies regret and begin to embrace the transformative power of experience. In a world where many things are fleeting, ephemeral, and beyond our control, the wisdom we gain from life's challenges is something that no one can take from us. What we learn is woven into the very fabric of our character. The knowledge we gain is ours to keep, to apply, and to share. In this sense, we are never truly robbed by the difficulties of life. The trials we face only strengthen our ability to navigate the future with greater wisdom and clarity. As the Stoics would remind us, what we have learned is not just an accumulation of knowledge. It is the foundation upon which we build a life of virtue, resilience, and purpose. Ultimately, the Stoic embrace of learning from every experience allows us to transcend regret. We can stop seeing our struggles as failures and begin to see them as opportunities for growth. Each moment of pain, loss, or difficulty is a potential lesson that contributes to our deeper understanding and self-mastery. What we learn from these experiences, whether in success or failure, remains ours forever. And it is this knowledge, not the passing circumstances, that shapes our lives. We cannot lose what we have learned because it becomes part of who we are, something that no event or circumstance can ever take away. Chapter 9. Identity is a verb, not a fossil. One of the most persistent traps we face as human beings is the tendency to define ourselves by our past. We often think of identity as something static, something fixed that we must live up to or protect. We say things like, "I am lazy," or "I am not good with money," and these statements shape how we behave in the present. We let these labels dictate our decisions, confining us to the person we once were, rather than the person we can become. But the Stoics would argue that identity is not a noun to be locked in place. It is a verb, a continuous action that is defined not by who we were, but by who we choose to become. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflects on the fluid nature of identity. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Our identity, then, is shaped not by some inherent, immutable essence, but by our thoughts, decisions, and actions in the present moment. What we choose to focus on, how we choose to act, and what we decide to prioritize in our lives determine who we are becoming. This continuous evolution is at the heart of the Stoic understanding of identity. We are never locked into a set identity based on our past actions or mistakes. Rather, we are always in the process of becoming, and our identity is defined by the choices we make now. The Stoics understood that the past is a part of us, but it does not define us. Seneca writes in his letters to Lucilius, "It is not the past we should mourn, but the future we have not yet shaped." This powerful statement shifts the focus away from our past mistakes or perceived limitations and places our attention firmly on what we can do today. We cannot change yesterday, but we can shape tomorrow with the choices we make right now. Stoic belief is that who we are becoming is always within our control, and it is not something determined by a fixed, unchangeable past. So, what does it mean to understand identity as a verb, not a fossil? It means recognizing that who you are today is not a product of your past, but a result of the decisions you make in the present. You are not defined by the mistakes you've made, the habits you've formed, or the labels others have given you. You are constantly in the process of redefining yourself with every choice. The Stoic approach to identity rejects the notion that you are trapped by who you once were. You are not a fossilized version of yourself, stuck in a particular identity. You are fluid, adaptable, and always evolving. One key aspect of this fluidity is that we are always able to shape our identity through deliberate action. The Stoics place a strong emphasis on virtue, the cultivation of qualities like wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These virtues are not inherent traits that we are born with, but qualities that we develop through consistent practice. For the Stoic, the question is not, "Who am I?" but rather, "Who am I becoming?" The answer to this question is always in motion, always evolving in response to our actions and decisions. In Discourses, Epictetus highlights the importance of focusing on actions rather than labels. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. How we respond to the events of our lives is what shapes our identity. If we constantly react to challenges with fear, laziness, or avoidance, we reinforce the identity of someone who is weak or fearful. If we respond with wisdom, patience, and courage, we build the identity of someone who is resilient and virtuous. Identity, for the Stoic, is not something that happens to us. It is something we actively create and recreate with every choice we make. This fluid, action-oriented view of identity has profound implications for how we approach change in our lives. Many people resist change because they believe that altering their identity is impossible, or that doing so would betray who they truly are. But the Stoic philosophy teaches us that our true nature is not fixed. Rather, it is an ongoing process of growth. We are always capable of becoming a different version of ourselves. The Stoic does not say, "I am this way," and resign themselves to it. The Stoic says, "I am becoming this way," and acts in alignment with that vision. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius reminds himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This idea can be applied to how we view our identity. While we cannot control the past, we have power over how we define ourselves moving forward. The key is to recognize that identity is a continuous process, and each moment offers the opportunity to shift the direction of our lives. If we do not like who we have been in the past, we do not have to remain stuck in that identity. Instead, we can choose to act in ways that align with the person we want to become. Consider the common struggle of overcoming bad habits. Many people identify themselves by their past actions. "I've always been lazy," or "I can never stick to anything." This type of thinking reinforces the idea that our identity is fixed, but it is not. If we want to change, we must begin by changing our actions. Each small step toward improvement is a declaration of who we are becoming. The Stoic approach to this is not to focus on the past mistakes, but to focus on what can be done now. By choosing different actions, we gradually shape a different identity. Similarly, the Stoic teaches that we are not bound by the judgments of others. Many of us feel trapped by how others perceive us, and we allow those perceptions to define us. But Epictetus teaches in discourses that the judgments of others have no power over us unless we give them power. It is not what others think of you, but what you think of yourself that determines your identity, he writes. The opinions of others, whether positive or negative, are outside of our control. The only thing we can control is how we choose to act and how we define ourselves in response to those external judgments. Understanding identity as a verb rather than a fossil also invites us to embrace imperfection. If we view our identity as a fixed point, we may feel like we are failures whenever we make mistakes or fall short of our goals. But the Stoic teaches us that our mistakes are not final judgments on our character. Instead, they are part of the ongoing process of becoming. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reminds himself, "The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. Just as a skilled pilot grows through adversity, we grow through our challenges and mistakes. They do not define us. They teach us and help us become who we are meant to be. In conclusion, the Stoic view of identity is empowering because it places the power to shape who we are entirely in our hands. We are not defined by past actions, external judgments, or fixed traits. Identity is a continuous process, an ongoing action that is shaped by the decisions we make, the virtues we cultivate, and the purpose we choose to follow. Instead of seeing ourselves as a fixed entity, we see ourselves as a work in progress, constantly evolving and adapting. Every moment offers us the opportunity to decide who we want to become. We are always becoming, and that is what makes life so full of possibility and potential. Chapter 10. No regrets, only forward. Regret is a powerful emotion, one that holds us in its grip by reminding us of all the things we wish we could have done differently. It is a weight that pulls us backward, forcing us to dwell on what cannot be changed and preventing us from fully embracing the present moment. It convinces us that our past mistakes are insurmountable obstacles and that our future is forever shaped by them. Yet the Stoic path offers a radical alternative: no regrets, only forward. This perspective does not deny the reality of past mistakes or suffering, but instead encourages us to see them as part of our journey, not something that defines our future. The Stoic teaches us to live with no regrets because the only direction we can control is the one ahead of us. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, frequently reminds himself to focus on the present moment. The present is the only thing we can control. The past is a memory, the future an uncertainty, he writes. For the Stoic, the past, though it contains valuable lessons, is not something to be mourned. What's done is done, and it cannot be undone. Regret traps us in the past, but the Stoic urges us to free ourselves from this mental prison by shifting our focus to the present. The Stoic lives in the present moment, fully aware of the power they have in shaping their future through their actions in the now. This Stoic mindset is empowering because it acknowledges that while we cannot change our past, we can always choose our next step. The past is a part of our story, but it does not have to be the defining part. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, emphasized that the only thing we have control over is our response to events. It is not events themselves that disturb people, he says in his discourses, but their judgments about them. Regret is the result of our judgments about the past, our belief that things should have gone differently, that we could have been different. But the Stoic refuses to let regret hold them back. Instead, they choose to respond to their past with clarity and focus on what they can do next. The Stoic path to living without regret involves embracing the impermanence of life and the recognition that every experience, even the painful ones, contributes to our growth. We learn from our mistakes, and this learning allows us to make better choices in the future. It is not the failure that defines us, but how we rise from it. As Seneca writes in Letters to Lucilius, "The greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." This perspective reframes our failures as opportunities for growth, not as burdens that drag us backward. By accepting that mistakes are part of life, we free ourselves from the paralysis of regret and choose to act with wisdom and virtue in the present. However, the process of moving forward requires a deliberate mental shift. When we focus on our past failures, we often see ourselves as victims of circumstances or as individuals incapable of change. This mindset limits our potential as it ties our self-worth to what has already happened. The Stoic challenges us to shift this narrative. Instead of identifying with our past mistakes or limitations, we are asked to define ourselves by our actions in the present. As Marcus Aurelius advises, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. The Stoic mindset teaches us that by changing the way we think about our past, we change our future. We are not defined by our failures, but by our ability to act with integrity, wisdom, and resolve, regardless of the setbacks we have encountered. This brings us to the critical importance of self-forgiveness. The Stoic approach to regret is not to deny or suppress the emotions that arise from past mistakes, but to process them constructively. Self-forgiveness is not about excusing our actions, but about accepting our humanity. We are not perfect, and we are bound to make mistakes, but these mistakes do not define who we are unless we allow them to. Instead, the Stoic embraces their imperfections, learns from them, and chooses to move forward with clarity and purpose. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflects on the idea of letting go of regrets. Do not waste time on what you cannot change. Move on, and let each step forward be a reminder of your growth. The act of forgiving ourselves is liberating. It allows us to accept our past without letting it control us, and it enables us to move forward with renewed strength. One of the most powerful aspects of the Stoic view on regret is its emphasis on direction over perfection. In Letters to Lucilius, Seneca writes, "It is not the things themselves that trouble us, but our judgments about them. If you want to move forward, stop looking back." This shift from perfection to progress allows us to see the value in each step we take, no matter how small. The Stoic understands that the goal is not to be flawless, but to keep moving forward in the right direction. Every action we take in alignment with our values, every decision made with wisdom, is a step toward our ideal self. Even when we stumble, we do not need to regret the misstep. We simply need to learn, adjust, and continue. A key aspect of living with no regrets is embracing the concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. This Stoic principle teaches us to accept everything that happens in life, both the good and the bad, as necessary parts of our journey. Rather than wishing things had turned out differently, we learn to embrace each moment for what it teaches us. Marcus Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Life's challenges, setbacks, and pain are not obstacles to our progress. They are the very means by which we grow. When we adopt the mindset of amor fati, we cease to regret the things that have happened to us and instead see them as opportunities to cultivate strength, resilience, and wisdom. The practice of living without regret requires a deep commitment to action. Regret flourishes in the soil of inaction. It is easy to dwell on the past, to wish for second chances, or to lament what could have been. But the Stoic knows that the only true remedy for regret is to act with purpose in the present. By focusing on what we can do today, how we can improve, how we can align our actions with our values, and how we can contribute to the world, we dissolve the grip of regret. Every step we take forward, no matter how small, is a declaration of our agency, our ability to shape our destiny through the choices we make. In conclusion, living with no regrets is a central tenet of Stoic philosophy. It is not about erasing the past, pretending it never happened, or refusing to feel the pain of our mistakes. It is about acknowledging that the past cannot be changed, learning from it, and choosing to move forward with purpose. The Stoic teaches us that the only direction we can control is the one ahead of us. The past is gone, and the future is uncertain. But today, in this moment, we have the power to decide who we are becoming. With every action, every choice, and every decision, we create the life we are meant to live. And in that, there is no room for regret, only forward.